My name is Alexander Skepp. I'm working at Spotify as an agile coach. Up until very recently, I used to work as a Scrum Master at King, which is famous for a few candy-related mobile games. And I first of all thank you, Håkan, for bringing me here. I was like this close of missing this because I was standing by the at the headquarters down the road. So I missed the other presentations, but my plan was to. I thought that you maybe were a bit tired of like lots of data and theory, so I thought that I should do some storytelling for you instead, and that's why I have this picture of myself and two of my kids. There's a third one hiding. The thing is that I've been in Södertälje 3 times in the last 15 years. This is the third one. The previous one was an annual car inspection, pretty boring stuff. The first one, however, was on the 27th of June back in 2002 when my wife and I had to, in a super agile fashion, drive from Stockholm to the hospital downtown to give birth to Theodore, who's sitting on the side. In this picture, this was taken in New York earlier this summer. He's actually turning 15 next year, and there are quite a lot of things happening in your life when you're 15. Technology is all around him, and I'm trying to think about myself when I was 15. Actually, that was when the internet boomed. The thing is that we didn't have a PC at home, so all my friends were talking all the time about all this cool stuff you could do, and even email. Like emailing was all the rage. You could, reach out to people across the globe, and all I could do was try to think about like fax machines, I guess, since we didn't have a PC. So there was, some tension here, and I'm just to get some sort of insights. Could you please raise your hand if you had a personal email address back in '96, like not for the family, but a personal one? Yeah, good. Quite a few of you. So I didn't have one. I was struggling to get one. And Hotmail launched in June, I think, of 1996. So I had a few options. I could try to convince my parents to buy a computer, but still they were fairly expensive back then. So I did everything I could. And I'm going to do a quick detour here, just to give you some theory. Could you please raise your hands if you are familiar with Sociocracy 3.0 or S3? Of you can look around so you can see who you can reach out to later if you would like to ask a few questions. Hey, Åsa. So in S3 you talk about a preferred reality and a current reality, and whenever there is a discrepancy you have something called tension, and we are used to using the word tension in a negative way, but in S3 you talk about tension as something good because now you have something to discuss, right? And this tension is a situation that motivates us to act. So it's something we should strive for, trying to identify. And in my case, the preferred reality was that so sorry about the fonts here, but I wanted to be able to communicate with the world. That was the preferred reality. But the actual reality was that I was able to communicate with like some people at school. So there was clear tension, and it wasn't any good at all, actually. So I had to stick with what I had, like in terms of interactivity or information. So I had the teletext or text-TV. That was like my version of the internet. I knew like all the pages. And this was basically, this is from like last year even. But nothing has really changed, I guess. It looked the same back then. So one day, I got so surprised when I was browsing through the TV3 teletext pages, and I saw a banner like this one saying like you can get your email address on teletext TV3. Has anyone heard about this, or did you use it back then? No, it was just mental. Believe me, so what happened is that you call this 071 number, a 071 number, which was mostly used for dating, like desperate daters. Sort of, and like even more crazy stuff that you shouldn't do when you're 15, or maybe you should, I don't know. So what happened was you called this number, you went through a registration process, and you were told like go to page 278, And then you just had to wait for the page to refresh on your TV because it took a while. And then you were given two options. One, for your inbox. Two, to compose an email. And that was it. I went to my inbox like, this is magic. And of course, there were no emails in my inbox. Because, nobody had my email address. So I realized, okay, I need to reach out to people to actually give them my email address. And so I created like my own business cards. I made this up yesterday, but the concept is the same, and the email address was basically like this. And I thought that now I'm going to get flooded by emails. This is the beginning of something. And so I went back home, called in, and no emails, of course. So I decided to write an email instead. I went to option number 2, and I was presented with something just mind-blowing. Basically, what you had to do in order to write an email was that you had to use like an ASCII code table it was like a legend saying, for a capital A, type like 0 and a number sign, and it just took forever. It took ages to write an email, and it was so expensive. And also, funny thing is that we didn't have a wireless phone at this time, so I was sitting in our kitchen with the cord stretched, trying to look from afar at our TV in the living room. So it was just like dreadful, believe me. So after a while, I spent like a few weeks on this service. Not much happened. I wrote a few emails. No one ever got back to me. And I realized that I was always given the same number sequence to log in, like somewhere between 250 and 290 maybe. And I thought, hey, wait a minute. What happens if I go to the next page instead? What do you think happened? What happened if I just went one page up? Of course, I saw somebody else's inbox. I saw them compose emails, and this is true. I was actually in touch with the developers yesterday to confirm this because I didn't want to tell you any lies. Okay, so it's just mind-boggling. And another funny side story is I learned also later that a bunch of people got together thanks to this because they also were looking at other people composing emails, and they started to write to each other, and there was like some sub-community of this. It's pretty interesting how things can turn out, right? So the story could have ended there. It didn't, not for my parents who had to pay the phone bill, and for myself who had to explain why these 06 number were showing all over the specifications. The thing is that all of this came from a driver that I had. I wanted to communicate, I wanted to explore, reach out to the world. And I was so eager to do that. It didn't really matter that it cost 4,55, almost 5 crowns a minute. And this is a pattern that I see in myself and in other people around me a lot. So this is a story that I tried to think about sometimes to remind myself about to not skip the important parts when you're starting a project. And my key takeaway from this is that you need to align a team, because I work with and on teams trying to make people happy, being happy about coming into work. And you need to align the team before you start jumping to the solutions. And why? Yeah, because it's cheaper, faster, and less painful for everyone. Even for the end users, actually, will have to use, or you should be able to use your products one day. So I'm going to break this down into 3 key parts here. The first thing is that you should try to create a shared understanding of the product vision. And one thing that I usually do is that I start out with a story map. Hands up if you've tried one, story mapping. Good. So this is just a quick way to lock everyone in, the key stakeholders, the team, everyone who has a say or should have a say on this. Make sure that you map out all the different steps in the complete user journey from start to finish. And you will be surprised how little you know, although you think you might have a lot of insights, because some people are smarter than you, and you will help each other out with filling this whole thing. And if you would like a different approach, which isn't as solution-driven, you could look up driver mapping, also from S3, which starts with more of a need, a driver, rather than trying to get to the solutions. So the second thing is to align. Oh, sorry, that was. Yeah. The second thing is to align the expectations. And what we do sometimes is that we actually build Lego. Have you tried Lego Serious Play? A few, good. So this, for those of you who don't know about this, this might seem like a weird thing to do during work hours, but it is tremendously good for making people show their vision on things where they might not always feel comfortable. So for people who are more silent, this is a really good way of trying to understand what am I expecting from you people on my team, and what can you expect from me? Being an agile coach, should I do this or that? And then you have topics for discussion. And what you can do, this is a complete team. Here you have all the different roles. And for you and for me, this doesn't make much sense, but for the team, it does. And you can keep this with the team as an artifact to look back on and try to relate to whenever there is a discussion around roles and expectations. Number 3 is to create a team vision. And a colleague of mine, Martin Österberg at Spotify, he came up with this interesting thing called mob writing, which is basically you put the team in a room with a whiteboard, ask them to write down their vision of what they would like to become when they reach nirvana as a team, silently, without saying a thing. Someone starts to write, somebody else erases that and replaces it with a word that might be better. And for instance, I made this in 7 minutes with a team of 10 people. And we used this for months to come. This was the actual message that the team wanted to get through. Highlighted are a few keywords that we used to actually measure against, to track over time. So when they say that they needed a clear goal, what they actually said was, we need a clear vision. How are we doing with that? Well, let's hear. So somebody has a super clear vision, but somebody else has a 3. And then you have something to discuss. So our mission here is to create value for the end users, for the business, and for the organization, and for the teams. And we have a lot of tools, and these are just a few. If you would like to get in touch with me, you can. No, I'm just kidding. So that's my email address. Thank you very much.